Well, now we're in a position to hatch things. So it's draw, hatch, selecting the objects. We pick the outer polyline and the two inner polylines that we wish to exclude from the hatch. So they're now selected, so it's the zone in there that becomes the decking. So we right click, and I've loaded the hatch pattern, the ACAD, this is in the metric area, so it's ACAD ISO, and I've chosen parallel lines, and I'll set a hatch figure, a scale figure. Now this is something that you just need to play with. I'll guess at 50 and OK it, and in goes my hatching. Now I confess to having rehearsed that 50, I did have to change on a couple of instances. So can you see that making a polyline around areas of interest works really, really well. Now we can do some moving of entities onto appropriate layers. I may be able to select the outer polyline. You can see the polyline goes over what will be some raised seating walling enclosing this space, and that looks a little ugly, so I could simply erase that, and now we have some nice clean looking hatching over the terrace area. So I hope that helps show how you can manage hatching very, very efficiently in the gCADPlus environment and save a great deal of time. Well, making a polyline to delineate the outer zone of the decking is really quite straightforward. I've put ortho on because everything's going to be squared off, and I just follow roughly the line. I go click, and we come up to here and in there and click, and now we can close the polyline. So I'm not too worried, and you notice in the close my last polyline segment is slightly off, and that's thrown the squaring off. We were running with ortho on, so I can actually fix that just by clicking on that handle through there and moving it into position. Now I don't need to be at all fussy about that polyline, because once the hatching's in, I'll remove it. I just want the hatching to take place efficiently through this zone. In order to put this second garden bed in, we can save a little time if we measure from, say, the bottom left across here, pretty close to about 1680, and if we come up here, we've got about 1900. So if we say draw a rectangle with 2 points, we can say specify the first corner point here, and we can use the at nomenclature at 1680 in the 1680 in the X, comma 1850 or 1900 in the Y. We'll get a rectangle sitting just where we want it. So that saves just a little time, and we'll be consistent. We'll offset that rectangle. It's a polyline that saved us having to draw the individual lines, so we can modify and offset the polyline and then just indicate the size, because if I right click now, see that the distance is in fact 300, so we can just indicate the size, and there we have it. So we've now two polylines. I'm not interested actually in the inner ones, but two polylines setting off what will be the planting beds within the decking area. So the next step is to draw a polyline around the outside perimeter of the space. Well, once you've drawn the shape you're after, and if you've drawn them as individual polylines, as I have done here, what you then want to do is select them all, right click and join. Now we have a polyline denoting that space. We could use the offset command to offset the polyline to get the internal space. So before we do that, let's just check on the distance from there across to there. So it's 308. So if we offset the polyline by 300 mil, we'll have a 300 millimeter planting zone for the outer planting. So modify, offset, select the object to offset, and that's the polyline that we've just drawn, and we're asked for us to specify a through point. Right click at that point and pick distance and then type 300. Once that's done, you can indicate the inside in this case, and the offset is done. So we've now got a polyline in the area that we want. We're more interested in repeating what we've just done with this garden bed area through here, and then we need to draw a polyline around the inside of the space because that's the area that's going to be hatched. I've changed the drawing colour to magenta, so let's put a polyline around this garden bed and square it off. So it's draw, polyline. We'll come over here and we'll pick the snap tool and start at the same point as the original drafter had done. So we'll type 1200, so we'll go at 1200, angle of 0. I've got ortho on, so I could simply have typed 1200 and hit the enter key. So there's our magenta line going in, and we want to go up in this direction here to about that point. I'm going to hit the enter key at the moment and finish that off because I'm interested in the length of this current line. The length of the current line is 2654, so 0.9994. So much better for your contractor to use whole numbers. So we'll make our next line 2650, which will be close to the existing. So it's draw, polyline from the end of the existing magenta line. We need to zoom in and be careful that we find it, and up in this direction. So it's 2650 and enter. And I'll hit the right mouse button, select enter to finish off. Now there are a number of ways that I can continue here. I could offset this line to the left and then offset that line up the same distances, but I'm sure you're able to manage that. What we want to end up with is a polyline around that space. If I go to the format and units, you notice here that under angular, decimal degrees, as I picked the drawing up, the output precision was 0, and that line was showing 360 degrees, but let's change that to 2 decimal places for angular, and OK. Now let's just pick one of those lines which slightly annoyed me because it wasn't quite horizontal, and you can see that the angle 359.57. So this little planter bed is just slightly skewed, and that, as I said, offends sensibility. We really want to fix that up. As a first step, I'll turn off the layers that hold the existing hatching and turn off the layers that show the existing path, which is going to be overlaid by the new hatching. And I've created a new terrace layer, and it's on that terrace layer that we will put the new hatching. What I'll be doing is to draw a polyline around the outside of the zone that is going to be hatched, and then a polyline around the inside of the zone. If I zoom in on this line here that shows that particular planting area, you may notice that the angle of one of those lines is a little off. It shows just a small kink in it. So let's just explode that line and pick it again, the individual line. That's interesting. That angle is 360, but there's a little line here which is also at 360, but there seems to be some sort of angle to it, and the length is 398.697. So I'm not quite happy with the way that that rectangle's been drawn, and nor the inner rectangle as well. And I'd just like to have a look at the units command, and it may well be that the units in this drawing are not set correctly, and there might be just a small angular difference which is enough to throw the presentation of that line off. This design calls for a bordered area, a decking area if you like, through this zone here, and that's going to replace the white outlined areas which represent an existing path. So the path will be removed, a decking built above those paths, and some seating placed around the decking area, and some planting within or cut through the decking area. So we'll need to put some hatching in, as been done here, to represent the decking area. But if I select the individual lines of hatching, can you see that the hatching's been done with lines, and gCADPlus offers a much more efficient way of putting hatching in rather than draw individual lines. That becomes a very tedious exercise, so we want to do that more efficiently.